pessimistic, optimistic, and everyone in between. My name is Connor Philippine. Welcome back to the Minnesotan Sports Podcast. And I'd like to apologize. I have not been uploading at all the last month. A lot has happened, personally and job wise. I just got a new job. Um, Moved out to the middle of Wisconsin. So it's like a 3 hour drive from where we are, and we all moved everything, and it was a whole process and a quick process. So I had no time to think about anything else. So now that I'm here, now that I am on a normal schedule again for work, I will be posting my normal, schedule of stuff. I'll be doing stuff all the time. I've been doing just raw reactions now for the last few weeks. So apologies for that. But getting back to tonight, the Vikings win 21 to 13. It was a very, very clunky, for the most part, pretty badly played game that the Vikings are very lucky that we won. 21 to 13 over a Colts team that is technically 4-4, but really only won one game against a semi-decent team in the Steelers. Other than that, they really would be, they're like the Bears. They would be a much worse record right now if they didn't play some really bad teams. And switch to Joe Flacco, who, at the end of the day, what I'm getting to is the Colts played worse than the Vikings. The Vikings did not play a better game. They did not play a good enough game to win. They just played basically less worse than the Colts did in this game. That first half was the worst half of Vikings football we've played all season long. We just, that's saying something because the Rams half was pretty bad too. But we just could not get anything going. The play calls were horrible. Ed Ingram and Garrett Bradbury, it's still a shame that they're starting guards or starting offensive linemen in the league. Ed Ingram missed so many key blocks that led to Sam Darnold getting absolutely, trampled in that first half. Garrett Bradbury got absolutely smoked. It looks like those Derrick Henry highlights from high school where he was like 2 feet taller than all the other kids and he just bulldozed everyone down. It has to be very embarrassing for you to be a starting pro center and let a guy do that to you, even if it was Stu, who's one of the best linemen in the game right now. But that was embarrassing. It just really sucks that we're getting to a point now where the line is now becoming a sticking point again, because that has happened to us so many times in our history, especially in the last few years, where all the other pieces are coming into place and the offensive line is the reason why we're either almost losing games or losing them, and we're right back to that same problem. So hopefully Ed Ingram can be replaced by Reisner next week, because I really don't know why they didn't make that move in this game. But the passing game, Darnold, it was kind of a combination of, there were some points where he was getting no help because of that offensive line. He was in trouble so much, but there are also situations where he also played a pretty poor game in the first half. He picked it up in the second, but in that first, it felt like there were situations where he just has to see pressure coming, regardless of if it's his fault that he held onto the ball too long or just bad offensive line play. You got to see the rushers coming and let the ball go. And he tried to do too much and tried to escape pressure. And we've seen the last few weeks, Darnold gets into situations where a 2nd and 10 becomes a 3rd and 20 or more because he decided to hold on to the ball, and he will retreat out. Instead of retreating left or right, he'll go straight curled back, and then he'll get tackled 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage. And those things can't happen because that completely blows up a drive. And he has to just learn. He's been better at that than previous years with other teams. But we're seeing a little bit of a regression in Sam Darnold's play as teams are starting to figure him out, and that's going to be a major concern as well going down the stretch. That being said, in the second half, they really got things going again. One thing we saw in this game more than we've seen in the last couple of weeks is this Vikings team. The main criticism, or one of the main criticisms people have had for them, is when it comes down to that situation the Vikings were in this game. You're up by, it's a one possession game. You have 5 or 6 minutes left on the clock. Can you run the ball out and then also still be aggressive enough to still try and score and try and ice the game? And that's exactly what the Vikings did. They started off the drive with some nice runs, stretching out that clock, bringing the possession all the way down to like 2.5 minutes left, and then being aggressive on that second and long, which Kevin O'Connell doesn't do very often, and throwing that ball into the end zone. That's the level of aggression that winning teams, or not stoop to, but rise to. That's what the Lions do every single week. They do it almost to a fault, and actually do it to a fault, where they're too aggressive in situations. But that situation, if the Vikings tried that and something went wrong and they threw that pass incomplete, I wouldn't have been upset at it even, because that's the kind of thing we need to continue to do as the season continues on. Because icing that game was the kind of Vikings we need to see going forward, not the Vikings we saw in the first half. Some questionable calls in the first half, from Kevin O'Connell, and leading into the second half as well in the third quarter. Like, it took way too long for Kevin O'Connell to see that this offensive line and edge, blocking in general, even with like wide receivers and everything on those design plays, was not working. And he continued to call those slow developing plays where you toss it out to the right or left side or near far side of the field to a wide receiver or running back, and he's caught up 5 yards behind the line and immediately gets smacked because our offensive line can't block. And that happens so many times, even leading into that third quarter, where that's probably the main thing if I'm a head coach that I mark off, like, we got to stop doing that. We got to get the ball out sooner and down the field. And I get you're trying to stick with what you know as a team, but you got to recognize those things, and especially not on a 2nd and 10 or second and long situation. Try and throw it out, to that part of the field. It just makes no sense to me. Yeah, key points. Offensive line needs help. Although I will say Cam Robinson put up a really good game. With Darrisaw being out and hurt for the year, we thought that was going to be a major reason why we're going to lose games. He actually held his own really well, and hopefully that continues the rest of the year, because if he can play like that, then we might have a pretty good situation on our hands down the stretch on the edges. But the edges were never the concern, even before Darrisaw went out. It was that interior line, and that needs to get fixed somehow. Hopefully Bradbury's gone by the end of the season or gets benched, and we use some of that extra cap space we'll have to replace him, but there's really no fixing that right now. There's no better center option for us. Reisner needs to be in over Ingram immediately. I don't care if he's played right guard before. Ingram cannot be a starting lineman anymore. It was just horrible. And then on top of that, just the play calling, icing the game was huge, and really the Colts, played themselves into that hole. They easily could have pulled ahead and been up by 2-3 possessions before the half ended, and we might not have been able to climb out of that hole. But thankfully for us, the Colts also missed some field. Oh, I forgot about the field goals. Will Reichard, turns out it looked like it was an injury that was causing him to miss some of those kicks. So missed his first 2 kicks of the season. Regardless of why he missed the kicks, regardless if it was an injury or even if he just straight up missed them, as long as we win the game, I am fine with him having a rough game like that, because I would hate to have a Gary Anderson situation where he is perfect all the way into the playoffs, then misses the biggest kick of his career. It's nice to have him at least miss a couple now, and get that through his head and psychologically, deal with that, and then go back next week. So that's fine. I'm not concerned about the kicking unless he has an injury that's long term, which would be a total Vikings thing to happen, because why would we have a consistently good kicker for the entire season? But overall, it's good to be in a situation like going into the season. I never thought I'd be watching this game against the Colts and being upset that we won by only 8. Like, this is the type of problem that a good team and a fan of a good team has, is that we wish we would have played better against a bad team, but still won. If you stick out the win, really that's all that matters. The Vikings had some things to fix and work out. Hawkinson got a few catches. It's kind of what I expected, first game back. But overall, the Vikings win 21-13. They improved to 6-2 on the season, and now that means that with the Packers on bye next week, well, actually no, because the Packers lost this week. I almost forgot that. So with the Packers losing and dropping to 5-3 on the season, now they are below us in the standings once again. They'll fall even further behind us if we win next week with them on bye. The Lions are firmly in first place right now, one game ahead of us, but technically two because of the tiebreaker. So it's going to be really tough to win the North now because the Lions, they've got some tough matchups coming up. This game against the Texans next week on Sunday night is going to be a great game. I still don't see the Vikings coming back and winning the North, but we're going to have to see. So let me know in the comments what you think. The Vikings win this game 21-13, improve to 6-2, and retake that second spot in the NFC North. Excited to be getting back into a normal swing of things and a normal schedule so that I can be posting my normal stuff. If you watched my channel last season, I did, analysis of the week's games. I did previews of all the Vikings games. I did previews and picks for all the weekly games for the NFL, and some other stuff in between. So I'll make sure to do a lot of that stuff. In the next couple months, I'll do twin stuff as well. So I'm back better than ever, and finally in a state, just time-wise and honestly mentally, where I can get back to regularly posting on this channel. And so thank you for your patience with that. But thanks so much for watching this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. Skol Vikings, and I'll see you on the flip side.